is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Good morning to you. The birds are chirping.
Hey, no.
Good morning to you. The birds are chirping.
You could try and take us, but with the gladiators, everyone rage but secretly the savior. Glory and gore go hand in hand. That's why we're making headlines.
The Eye Opener.
And I'ma get it, I know what I'm doing. Patience and the time, know what I'm doing, baby. Staring at it, I know what I'm doing. Staring at a gladiator, talking about a revolution. No, this is not a game. No, baby.
And good morning, and welcome to the Eye Opener, your weekly dose of something different, right? Ooh, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be great. It is a beautiful Saturday morning. I think it rained quite a bit last night. It is basically a thunderstorm. I don't know if it was just over my house or just in my neighborhood, but I definitely felt it. Hope you didn't leave your car windows down, or if you went out for a jog today, you're wearing shoes and you're out on the beach barefoot, because it's going to be a very not pleasant experience. But yes, it is a beautiful Saturday morning. I am glad to be alive and here in this wonderful Bahama land, whatever that means. Shanae, how are you doing this morning?
I'm okay, how are you?
You're okay? Well, what does that mean, Shanae? You sound like you slept 8 hours. You had a meal. What does that mean?
I'm alive, so it's great.
How was your week?
It was meh. It was okay.
It was meh?
Yeah.
What makes your week meh? Come on, you're alive. Things happen. We had a lot happen in the news. Nothing excited you? Ignoring the murders, of course, because, it seems like things have gone back to normal in New Providence with murders and robberies and, No, nothing? Just a bland old week? Oh, wow. The life of a 19-year-old in Nassau.
Now.
Oh, shoot. She have a 2 and a 0 now. Welcome to the club. It only gets worse from here. Just want to let you know that. It goes straight up downhill from this point onwards in your life. Dr. Ian Bethel Bennett, you're absolutely a friend of the show. I'm glad to have you in this morning. We have quite a bit to munch and chomp through. How's your week been?
Not as good as hers, because she's queen of everything this morning. So Shanae's has been good. It's been.
It's just been chugging along. Nothing dramatic. Nothing happened. Didn't have to interact with government institutions again to get things done.
We are the institutions we function in.
We can't say that too loud. I mean, yeah, because the people make up everything. I don't know if any of you have had to do anything with the government at all, but a lot of it you can do online now.
So you can do it online.
It's
but
still the
you
same
need the piece of
paper,
flaming paper,
yeah,
to take into the office for them to be able to do it online.
I mean, you can screenshot it now.
No,
see, the problem I have with it isn't just the piece of paper. It's like the fact that I have to take things in, and then whatever I pay for online for the government services, right, through their portal, it's the same process, right? You still go in and show somebody the piece of paper or screenshot, and you still sit down like you always did. And the only thing that's changed is the method of payment, really. Right? Because it's the same process. You still sit down and wait. They still give you a piece of paper. And I'm like, why can't you just give me this digitally? You already have a QR code on things like your, what's it called again? Is it a police record? The one you need to travel with, man. If you don't have a visa, that is. The United States police record. Yes. They have a QR code on it now. So I was like, why can't you just do this digitally? You don't have to print on paper unless someone requests paper. And then that's going to be another thing, right? Because then it'll be like, oh, it's $1 extra to print on paper, and then people will be up in arms about that. But we waste a lot of money on having everything on paper and filing cabinets. Not saying that we shouldn't have filing cabinets. I think we got too much of it. Oh, that look on your face. Oh, we are the institutions, right?
We are the institutions. But that paper, I mean, as much as I want to get away from paper, sometimes that paper is essential. Because so many things happen that make you go, and then the paper disappears. But if you have a copy of that paper that you have kept,
Like paying a ticket. The police will book you for the rest of your life
Honestly.
if you don't keep those receipts in
My
your
dad told me
car.
to take a picture of my ticket
Yep.
and how I paid it and
Yep.
email it to myself
Yep.
and keep it on my drive.
Yep.
I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah, because if they ever pull you over again, they'll be like, "Oh, I see you have an outstanding ticket from 4 years ago
Yep.
that you never paid. We're gonna book you again." I mean, it's not funny, but it happens. Well, anyway, we had a lot of things happen. A lot. If we had I guess we could call it closure to the George Floyd situation with Derek Chauvin. He was charged in the United States with 22.5 years. I'm not sure when he's eligible for parole. Some people said that this was too little time. Some said it was just enough. It seems like more people was on the line of this is not enough time. I'm not aware of how much, if any of the other officers involved in the murder, I guess I can say, of George Floyd. I'm not aware if the sentencing hearings for them are coming up anytime soon, or if the cases have come to a conclusion. But obviously, he's the one that's in the public eye. No. Have you been following this case at all, Shanae?
I read the one article on him getting sentenced, and then the speech he said before he got sentenced.
Oh, he had a speech.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna listen to that. I'm good.
I thought it was interesting.
His speech was interesting.
Very
was
so-
there another black man killed last night? Was there another black man
Is there
killed
not always?
yesterday?
Is there not always?
You know, one of the cases that people have not commented on is the case of I think it's 2 young women who were killed in Britain around the same time. And the Metropolitan Police, were taking photos with their bodies. The mother is one of the first black women bishops in England, within the Anglican
Yes.
Church. And it just happened because these were 2 Negroes who happened to be there, and I use that word intentionally, fully aware of all the baggage it contains. And
They was just heating up the place, according to.
according to our friends in this side of the world, who can say these things because there is no racism in the Bahamas.
Absolutely not. The darkies just warming up the air, man. You know what I'm saying? I will never let that. I don't forget a lot of things. Some things I do forget, but a lot of things I don't forget. I wasn't surprised by. I'm glad the Derek Chauvin thing, but I was like, this happens every single day in the United States. And not even just that. I don't say. I guess it's a mini documentary series, which kind of ties a lot into the topic we're going to dive into today. It was about different neighborhoods in different cities in the United States, and not neighborhoods. Sorry, yeah, well, it is neighborhoods, and the breakdown in terms of income and I guess you could call it redlining, right? Which is this practice where they don't give loans, or they give higher interest rate loans to persons who live in certain neighborhoods, usually divided by race, and if you're poor, you're going to get screwed. Kind of like you do here. But anyway, it's way more extreme in the United States. It does happen here. Oh, not for necessarily the banks, but there are other lending institutions that have attended like payday loans and all that nonsense. Listen, in the United States, that is a scourge. Payday loans, and it affects white people too, where they give you your salary up front, I think about 2 or 3, sometimes 3 months in advance, and then the interest rates are like, the regulations on them, they could go up to like 100-something% interest rates. So you will never pay that off. And it's so bad that when that bureau, whoever sold you that credit, in that line of credit in the first place, like gets what they want to get out of the situation, they just sell it to somebody else.
But isn't that what brought us into this situation that we're in now? Because it morphed from the savings and loan crisis, that morphed from the mortgage crisis. I mean, isn't that how we got here?
It's the capitalist way. But yes, the mini documentary I saw, it wasn't really eye opening at all. It just was kind of like it all made sense. Like a lot of the cities, when you look at it from a bird's eye view, obviously, and you actually have a grid to show which neighborhoods are which, and you look at each city from around the United States, you start to notice some trends, right? They look similar in the way that it's constructed and the way certain things are laid out in the city in terms of highways, arterial highways, I should say, and then how they're connected to the affluent areas, right? Or the places for good shopping or whatever. And it's literally like looking at a manuscript for how to gentrify. And it didn't blow my mind. It just was like, this is so easily fixable for, the richest country on earth. But it's like, I see the same problems they have over there here. And it made me think about something, right? About this, because you also can divide it down in the United States, especially in the state of Texas, where you can say that, I don't know if immigrants is the right word, depending on your persuasions, persons who come into the United States tend to find housing in certain areas deliberately, as by design. And then it just reminded me a lot of New Providence, because we had that whole ruling this week that supposedly by the AG isn't a ruling, but then we're going to get into that a little bit later. But you're going to say something.
I was going to say, when you look at the planning of cities happen because of history. So Miami was a city, and the downtown Miami was a huge part of Miami, and it was thriving in the 70s. It was really cosmopolitan. It was huge. Miami Beach was a place where people went to go and wait for death.
Yes, retirement.
Hialeah and Dorado were just pretty much farmland, because that's what, Homestead was. It was a big base. But Miami was a massive city with lots of people going and coming. And Miami died. So what happened was that downtown sector just was abandoned, so all the capital left. And what moved in was homelessness, drug abuse, prostitution, and...
Cocaína. Lots of cocaine.
Cocaína, exacto. Eso también. And so what happened was that you have all these 95, as you say, arteries coming off Miami that really block up the way the city works. And then by the end of the 1990s, you have the re-gentrification or the renewal of Biscayne, and now you have the renewal of downtown Miami. So if you go to Miami Book Fair, it's actually a wonderful place to be now. Except it's still really problematic after 5 p.m. because there's still sectors that have been left to their own devices. But what has happened in the malls in Florida have taken over.
What happened to Liberty City? Was Liberty City always...
No, Liberty City was a black development that became ghettoized through the way the roads worked around it.
And just like what I was saying, yeah.
And then, again, because segregation comes to a close, it means that people are able to leave. So there was a wonderful documentary on that on PBS about 2 weeks ago, looking at the way desegregation basically destroys black communities, especially when they build roads through them. And I know...
I've heard arguments, the whole thing about post-1960s, early 1970s, what happened to the black communities, and some were saying, like, I don't know, listen, this isn't my opinion, but I've seen the whole thing also about the roadways for the black communities, also the state, listen, this isn't my opinion, it's controversial, that's why I'm just prefacing this, right? The assertion that when the government stepped in and gave more assistance, it said, or some argue, that led to the black family structure for whatever, that's what they say, that whatever fragile structure existed at the time, essentially collapsing under all those pressures. And that you found that persons would much rather, this is the assertion that's made now, would much rather seek government assistance and aid and money rather than they themselves go out and work, as they say, and the family structure collapses.
Now that's a whole argument that's missing a gap where they're telling you that these people are lazy, they don't want to work because they're being
They point especially to the women and say that the women chose the check over the man.
There was a report sent to the White House that was not allowed to be completed by Moynihan in the United States. And that report on the situation of the Negro households was incredibly informative, but was used in the wrong way because the data he'd collected showed that there needed to be structures put in place to help support families. But what was done was it was used to basically show that women ran everything and created these problems that emasculated black men. And this was one of the problems with the black family. But that same thing can be said for poor families. What was absent is the critical infrastructure or the critical undergirding for reading that report. If I go to Puerto Rico now, to bring it into the present, that same situation happens. But one of the problems is nobody's looking at the way working class people are undereducated so that they will always be underemployed so that they cannot make as much as they need to make to survive. And the argument is that we can't afford to pay them more because that would just destroy us. So we can't afford to pay them a living wage. We will pay them the minimum wage, and the minimum wage is not a living wage.
We're gonna we're touching on a lot of things, right? One of them being there's this guy, right, who invented this game called Minecraft. I never got a chance to play it. Didn't play it. Yeah, it looks horrible to me. But I am not going to judge. People love the game. It was a massive success. Microsoft approached him after he tweeted something on Twitter, people being very critical of him and his design studio. Microsoft bought it out for $2.5 billion. And dude, I think after taxes, he walks through like $1.3 million. $1.3 billion, dollars. Became a billionaire overnight. And you'd think that someone would just ride off into the sunset and that's it. No. Dude goes on Twitter and like essentially documents his experience. And this ties right into what I'm talking about. Documents his experience and says that it's basically extraordinarily lonely. He thought this would fix all of his problems. He finds himself going to cafes and waiting for his friends to like get off from work or be done with their family so they could go do stuff with him. And he's just like, there's this big imbalance because, you don't have to work anymore. So all of your friends still have to dedicate their time. And it made me realize something, ignoring his situation, because, he's rich, he could figure it out. Probably not. But the thing that I realized is he got married, got divorced, all that stuff. You'd think, his wealth would get slashed in half and go sideways. No, he's gotten richer since the pandemic has begun. And then I realized something. It's just like this whole thing that we push the narrative of in the Bahamas about education, not just in the Bahamas, even in the United States and the developed world, is false. The assertion, I think it was Nelson Mandela that said one of the fastest ways or the easiest or the greatest ways out of poverty is through education. I don't believe that anymore. I used to, and I say that because for persons in the developing world, or some people may call us the third world, the fastest way out of poverty is out of your country. Because through getting the education, your salvation is getting poached by a big nation and leaving the country. When I thought about the circumstances in the Bahamas after seeing that guy's experience, it's like I actually know Bahamians who don't work, who literally find things to do while their friends are at work. And then when their friends get off, then they go party or do whatever they got to do. And it really made me think, it's like I'd say 90% of this country is borderline, if not poor. Because including myself, we have to sacrifice so much of our life and our time to get a couple of dollars to stay alive. And when you think about the circumstance of persons who were defined as stateless, because we had someone when I was on Dwight Show this weekend who said that she's born here and lived here her entire life, and to this day she still does not have a passport. and she works odd jobs here and there because couldn't get a paper straight. She put in an application at 18, and they've been frustrated in the process for this person lost, when you talk about the paperwork, right? They lost this and lost that. And I've heard these stories before, and it really made me think about something, it's like, I remember when Anna Nicole...
There is an institution that simply loses files.
Unless you're Anna Nicole Smith, then your citizenship application. Oh, yes, Peter and I got. Then your wife get through instantly. No questions asked. And when I saw this ruling this week, I've lost track of time, right? But when I saw the ruling of 3-2, in the, what's the name of the court? The High Court. Which one is the Supreme Court and the High Court? I know.
Court of Appeal.
See, this is why I'm not a lawyer. Okay? I should be a lawyer. I think I'd make some good money, but
that's also classist.
Of course it's classist. That's how you get out of poverty in this country. Okay? You take advantage of the system.
That's how you think you get out of poverty.
Yeah, you don't. You gotta be a part of the clique. But anyway, the ruling was 3-2. And it essentially said that if you're born here, you should have citizenship. You're entitled to it at the date of birth instead of when you reach 18. So, Sinead, if you didn't know, I don't know what's happening now, right? Because partly some things have been said by the AG, and I saw William make some statements this week. What's basically happened, what has been happening is that if you are a unmarried single woman, or you report that you are, because I've seen some strange things happen, right? You can pass citizenship on to your child. But if you are a married woman and you have a child, there's some hiccups there. If you are an unmarried man in the Bahamas and you have a child, you got some hiccups there. But if you are a married man in the confines of the Bahamas, you can definitely automatically pass citizenship on to your child. Now, I know of a case of someone who had a child, I don't know where, in another Caribbean island, I suspect. And he is the father of the child. The child lives with him, and I think the child is still entitled to citizenship. At least they're applying. So we'll see how that situation turns out. But anyway, the ruling is supposed to say, like I said, just like in the United States, you come here, you're born here, you're a citizen of this country, or you should be. You're entitled at the date of birth. And Bahamians are up in arms about that. Sinead, you give me that look of, I know. You got to have an opinion on it, man. A lot of people are upset. Some people say this government pretty much can't win a case to save their lives, especially the AG. I mean, all the AGs seem to be in that. Unless they nolly it, then things go well for them. You nolly everything. Even criminal cases, sometimes you got to nolly, I forget what that. But anyway, no one cares in this country anyway. But the point that I was bringing up about the whole situation is, first of all, I support what the court has said. I don't think there should be any question about citizenship. Either you is or you isn't. In the Bahamas, it's like, if you broke, good luck. If you rich, come on that. And so the AG said, essentially, as you alluded to earlier, it's not a ruling, suppose so he says, and that the government doesn't have to do anything. Which is strange to me because on the campaign trail, before they got into office, they also said that they would address the situation by passing some laws to rectify the wrongs. But this is the part that confuses me. Because he did say in the past that, they never promise any of these things. They didn't promise, did they? FNM promise that on the campaign trail? I don't know.
I think the reporters have to do a better job of showing their promises that they've made on the campaign trail. But that can't happen because everybody's, deeply compromised by things that happen in the dark.
In the dark? Not in this Bahama land. Government in the sunshine.
So my question to you is, which laws have primacy over the other laws? So this government has said that it has enacted the Commercial Enterprises Act,
yes.
Right? It has then gone and amended the Fisheries Act, I think it is, that facilitated the hiring of international persons to fish in Bahamian waters under Bahamian companies or on the Bahamian flagged vessels. One of the areas opened up by the Commercial Enterprises Act was fishing. So if the act that is now amended to exclude international persons is competing with the Commercial Enterprises Act, which one wins? I'm dumb, so help me.
Maybe that's something that's liable for someone to challenge in court. And then, someone does an injunction eventually. Freezes the process.
When you go to law school, they tell you that this would be a good test case. But we don't seem to have test cases here where that challenge... And this would be another good test case. Should a person who was born in the Bahamas of a foreign mother and a Bahamian father out of wedlock be denied citizenship in the interim now, that would be a test case to challenge. Because on what grounds are you denying that person citizenship?
We lose the paperwork.
So remember now that you have documented that you put in your paperwork. So if your paperwork has been documented as being submitted, then the onus is on the government, which is us, to respond. That's one of those legal contracts that we seem to ignore. And I know the government will always obfuscate and do whatever. All governments do that.
Yeah. And the next government is going to do the exact same thing. Even if some of the...
There is no... we have gone so far down a road that even 10 years from now, we are still going to be recovering from the road we're on.
I think, what is that? There's a term for that. It's called path dependency, isn't it? Where once you... the decisions you make, let's say 10 years ago, locked you down a path, just like you said. And to break out of that, you would have to dismantle everything and start all over again, which then puts you on another path. And then any turns any government after you makes, you basically just the stop, review, and cancel, and dismantling in some institutions or some programs.
Help me understand the logic.
I think it's legal pandering. On paper, they'll say that we did this.
Is that like panhandling?
I don't see,
Okay.
It's very confusing. Because on one hand, they say one thing, and then... I don't understand. I didn't even know that those two things were in conflict with one another with the fisheries.
Don't listen to what they say. Because they're not going to say anything that makes sense. I mean, come on. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful to my honored...
The best among us, yes.
Right. But it seems like there is a moment of passion when they get up to speak that comes without any real... what is that word called?
Purpose?
Preparation.
I think, isn't that one of the major problems of our country? Is it preparation? Is it preparation execution? Or do we suck at both? Wow, just do you know anybody, Sinead, who's in that boat? Essentially, like students who are at UB. I know two who are at the University of the Bahamas now, who pay international fees. One of their parents is definitely Bahamian. They're over the age of 18. And they're trying to get their paperwork sorted. Or you haven't met anyone like that?
Yes.
You do?
I know someone. I tutored someone who pays, but I think his father's Bahamian or something like that.
Boy, that's one thing.
Which is sad because he's extremely smart.
So what will happen
for
eventually is that he will get into the position where he can actually leave and thrive. And the country loses.
Well, that always happens. Yeah. And this is the sad reality. I kind of don't blame people. It's like when nurses leave, it's just I know what y'all stand for. I'd be in all this. Like, if I stuck through with that program when I was at the college at Bahamas, and considering what I saw happen during the pandemic, I'd have been like, no, I'm leaving. I don't mean to say, because I saw John Bender also make some statements about some shortages in the country, and he said a good field for Bahamas to go into is nursing. And I was like, no, it's not. It's a good field in general, but not here. It's terrible here. The pay sucks, and the treatment sucks, and you got to fight to get time off. No, it's a very ghetto experience. I don't recommend anybody getting involved with it. Because the reality is, like I said, the notion that education is your way out, that's a false narrative. The getting out the country is your way out, or being born into a rich family.
But can't you use education to get out? A lot of people.
Yeah, but the education isn't your path to prosperity here.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying a lot of times we go to school, and a lot of, like you said, the bigger countries come and they pick you up, especially like our nurses and stuff like that. So
We have a lot of Bahamians of Haitian descent who get poached from the United States, who are exceptionally gifted academically, and they try. I know 3 that tried to contribute to this nation, and they were frustrated every step of the way. And when they got a scholarship opportunity, gone. No.
There was a Jamaican writer, Anthony Winkler, who wrote a book, The Great Yacht Race. He wrote a number of, incredibly illuminating, very sarcastic, very, very funny books. And in one of his novels, he has this British couple coming from Armpit, England, and that were of the Butwick part of Armpit, England, and they come to the Caribbean and they become incredibly wealthy because they are able to move in a particular sector of high society. That speaks to exactly what you both are speaking about. Because of a particular color or position, they succeed, not because of anything they know.
I mean, yes. The rigid. It's an institution that's an informal, formalized, well, I can't even say it. It's an informally formalized institution, if that makes any sense. It's not overt and on paper, but it definitely exists. And the question about the citizenship issue, which confuses me again, because they promised on the campaign trail that this was something they were going to address, and they said the way that they were going to address it wasn't through amending the Constitution, it was through passing a law to achieve the same effects that referendum was seeking to achieve. I don't know if it was all...
I think that was Dame Joan.
Yes, she pushed that. She pushed that narrative as well, and this government on the campaign trail made statements to such an effect. The part that confused me, like I said, is that Tate?
Hello?
Tate!
Hey.
Welcome on the show from Miami-Dade South. How are things doing?
Everything's good. How are you?
I know news has traveled different in Freeport. I don't know if you guys heard that the citizenship situation in this country has changed.
Well, they're not sure because they're still waiting for the
Privy Council. I mean, the Privy Council is probably going to rule the same thing. I'm guessing, right? I find it hard to... Actually, you know what? I don't know, Because when I read the Constitution and I read Justice Winder's submission, I said disagree with him or agree with him. I was just like, wow, both of these arguments, because I don't remember all the names of our justices. Forgive me. But I saw 2 of the arguments against, because it was 3 for, 2 against. And I was like, both of these arguments are kind of compelling. I found Justice Winder's argument more compelling, and it's not because I'm biased. It just was like it's a good argument. But I don't know how it would stand up to the Privy Council. Though I have my assertions about it, or beliefs that they're more liberal, and that therefore they would be biased to rule in support of it. I don't know, though. That's my assertion. I'm not saying that is indeed the case. That's my layman's understanding of how these things work. If that makes any sense. I'm saying that also based on the situation with the death penalty, where there seems to be I don't know what the definition of the worst is, because I followed the Coffee Goodman case, which really confused me. And I have a very on and off, hot and cold relationship with the death penalty, because I kind of don't think it would work very well in our context, considering the efficiency of some of our processes. I'll say that without libeling anything. Getting myself in hot water, right? With the efficiencies of some of the processes. So,
Well, one of the challenges that the Privy Council always comes to is the fact that it takes us too long, and that nullifies the whole appeal for the death sentence from the beginning, because it takes the country 12 years to bring a case to trial. that is unconstitutional desde el principio.
We just had a Kenyan who got awarded with a couple $100,000 for.
Oh no, he's gonna get more.
Yeah, but I mean, like, this is a regular thing of this unconstitutional, like, with the cases, incarceration, sometimes not even charging anybody at all, and they just get lost in the system. Like, that's a normal occurrence here. We are the institutions, right?
It's a penal colony. We don't discuss these things, but it's a penal colony. We have penal islands set up, and criminals were sent to these places, just like we kept Haitians that landed in the Bahamas on Athol Island, just like we kept this one in this sector, just like we have a place out Carmichael Road that exists outside the Constitution.
But I then ask the question, though, because but every political party, we're not saying that, the two major ones, the FNM and the PLP, whether or not you agree or disagree with me, have largely...
I don't know, Shanae.
Yeah, Shanae, that's a good question. You're 20 now. Your life's changed. You see things differently. Tate, how old are you now?
21.
Great!
Whoa.
You're one on top of yours now, Tate. You see... Yes, he can. You know, and Americans can drink here. I was gonna say
They can drink here too.
I mean, what is the smoking age in the Bahamas? Does anybody know the answer to that question? Right? Yo, in certain countries there's a smoking age.
Yeah, 18.
But is there one in the Bahamas?
Nope.
Yes, there is 18.
Smoking age?
There's a smooth in it.
I don't remember ever seeing it. Prove me wrong. Maybe it exists. Maybe it doesn't. But anyway, I mean, on the packaging it'll say 18 and over, but that the packaging isn't really reflective of what happens in the Bahamas because, you know, even though they have the stamp which you're supposed to have, even though some stores don't sell the, you know what, I ain't switching on nobody. If the government can't figure it out, whatever.
Oh, the government's got it figured out completely.
You notice that when we raised the taxes on cigarettes, all of a sudden, local brands popped up. Anyway, I ain't calling the names though, but I've noticed that when we talk about this thing about gotta play the game.
What is a local brand?
A local brand would be someone fronting some things for an international.
Why can't we say backing?
You're right.
As a whole.
They're. I mean, not use the word fronting. Someone in front of something as the face, and they have a brand that's attached to a much larger brand outside of the country. Oftentimes.
That's what happened on Beach Street.
What? No, I mean I don't know a local brand. What is a local brand?
Is Palms one?
Oh, it is?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm asking.
So, like I was saying, it's going to no, but it's happened. Like, pay attention to when laws change and raising taxes on things. I mean, you could argue that obviously you want to have protectionist measures in place, and therefore you raise the tariff so your local brands can compete, right? In theory. Now, this is the Bahamas, right? So it's 9 times out of 10 a gangster operation. So, you know, it is what it is.
So in Islanders in the Stream, Creighton and Saunders document how Bay Street has been allowed to flourish as was, as is, as ever shall be, world without end, through legislation. And even though the legislation claimed to be doing one thing, the effect was totally opposite to what it claimed. So you had this liberalizing effect of the legislation. I mean, this is something that Tate should be able to comment on in Freeport, because you have the
Port?
Those people.
I mean, that's the only thing they got in Freeport.
You want to the accent of I think that's just the case.
No, I'm serious. Like, the port is literally the second coming. Because the government...
Well,
anyway,
the government
can't do much.
Because they have ceded their rights to the Freeport Port Authority. The Port Authority owns Freeport.
Mm-hmm.
And there is such a conflict of laws and regulations that it seems that nothing's happening. But I'm dumb. Again, I don't know.
I always thought you could just amend the Constitution and just be like, well, this is unconstitutional
Well,
now.
some things can easily be amended. Other things cannot. The citizenship thing requires...
A referendum.
But it also requires more than a 50%.
From the people, and I think it's what? How much percent in the House? 60%?
Something like that.
That's crazy.
Because it's one of those entrenched
We have several of those.
But QC Monroe said, they said it wasn't a ruling. They said that was always the Constitution or something they were saying. Like,
Read it. Okay. Mr. William Monroe says a lot of things. And I'm not saying that he's wrong by any things he says. I am not a lawyer. Sometimes when he reads things off, I really be saying to myself, who writes these things? But I understand the legal language.
And I have to go back to something that Justice, goodness, said at one of the Eugene Depuge Law School lectures a few years ago about environmental litigation. And this was when we were discussing the Bimini situation, and you have to make a coalition within the place in order to have standing. So, a group from Nassau cannot go to Bimini, even though it's within the same country.
Kind of like a Luthro.
Exactly.
And the situation with Disney, yeah.
Yeah, so there is no legislation that stops that. The only way it can be legislated is through the courts, and that is a backward way of doing it. Once you have a trial, then you have jurisprudence. Jurisprudence builds up. But that's not an effective way of doing it, because we've watched the courts mandate that people cease and desist from yucking out the mangroves, for example, or plowing down a protected heritage site.
And they go do it.
And they do it anyway under the cover of dark, even when there's a curfew on and nobody is found out. Mind you, everybody knows it's happening. There's a wonderful building that got torn down on Harbor Island that was protected, and I know nothing about it.
Doesn't the Antiquities and Monuments Corporation...
Who?
Who? I thought they had some jurisdiction because they mandated something for one of the buildings downtown that I think caught fire. That they could not tear down the building.
So that's why it burned.
Yeah. Sinead, read the part. No, I thought about that too. But I thought about it. I was just like...
Who are you talking
the
about?
Antiquities and Monuments.
Who are they?
They got I don't know if they still have the forts, because I know they're on this.
Oh no, you can't even photograph the forts anymore. The forts are not touchable.
Yeah, pretty much, and that seems like that's going to
Ministry
change
of
hands.
Tourism.
That's going to change hands now. Well, I don't know if it's going to happen because there's one of the criticisms I saw the opposition come at the FNM for was that
Which opposition?
when you got 4 people in the opposition, but there's more than 4 now. It's like 5. Anyway. I don't keep track because the government can change anyway. But I'm saying that because they statements made also by the Prime Minister about the situation with the government, in his words, being unable to upkeep these things in terms of the forts and stuff. And that
When did he say this?
That was in the House this week.
Oh, man can say plenty, eh? Wow.
Well, anyway, allegedly, there's supposedly some decision now, I guess, is going to go before Cabinet about making a decision of some entity that is allegedly close to certain parties or certain individuals that may be taking this over. So it's just basically a changing of hands. Now, I was under the impression the Antiquities and Monuments Corporation was a quasi-ish government institute. Why did you say that? Am I saying it wrong? Is it the Monuments and Antiquities? The thing, it was, you know what?
No.
You may know something I don't know. So.
Who heads up that organization?
Now?
What legislative power do they have? What is their role in society? Where do they function? Where do they fall?
I like that you're looking for rules and guidelines where, in this country, the National Intelligence Agency existed with no legislative... Anyway, that's another conversation for another day.
It's like the place that exists on Carmichael Road that existed since 1990 something that does not exist in law.
What? Oh, yes. I mean, it does. The contention center does exist. There is a place in law that says that people should be detained, but the issue is like the whole, how the not policing of it, the legislation to, you know what? All it says is a place should exist. There's nothing governing it to say like you cannot do this or you can do this. A person's gonna be. I understand that part, but it does make provisions for a space. Anyway, Sinead, go ahead. That is another problem we have.
Okay, he was responding to. He said that the court. He was responding to what Grenfell said, and he said he's absolutely correct. The Court of Appeal has said that this has been the law since 1973. That the illegitimate children of men born in the Bahamas are born Bahamians from 1973.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's why he said.
Yeah, but it's gonna be. The problem I have, like I said, with the ruling, isn't the ruling. The problem I have is like, what you can do to make this happen, because.
How did it get to that point? If it was the law, why was...
Because there's an interpretation of the law that has been conveniently used to keep a particular sector out of society. That doesn't mean that everybody falls into that position. So if a single woman has a child for a British subject, the single woman's child is a Bahamian. But that single woman's child is also British. If he or she can show proof that their parent is X penis from X place.
I've wondered about that because technically, can't Bahamians born before 1973 still claim British citizenship to this day? I think I wanted to do that, so I gave them British passport.
But it's more complicated. So Turks and Caicos Islanders are British.
Yes, and Cayman,
and they have these wonderful protective clauses that are really complicated. So, Margaret Thatcher, in her loveliness, came in and changed the law to make it harder for people to become British who were born in the colonies. So what we're seeing with the Windrush generation is really much more longer standing than this. So what's her name? Priti Patel? I don't know how pretty she is, but she's anyway. The British Home Secretary is very divisive of immigrant parents, and this is again where the complications come in, because the understanding is that anybody coming into the country would be much more embracing of others, but that's not true. You come in and you close the door behind you. You know, piss off, because you're going to bring down the country. So there are a lot of immigrant groups who are far more conservative once they are.
Yeah, it's about me getting straight.
Exactly. And my family.
Well, I mean, you saw that with Melania Trump. And
the former minister of immigration, I think he must have been the first minister of immigration, I'm not sure, said something very interesting. And he says that he doesn't know who is a Bahamian anymore. He said this on the news yesterday.
Who is this?
The day before.
Loft?
Yes.
Oh, Loftus-Roke, okay.
So there are some interesting things going on that are not being challenged. And that leads to other problems that cannot be fixed.
Which makes me wonder, are we conflating citizenship with identity?
Oh,
right?
yeah, and this is the problem.
Because citizenship is a legal thing. It's kind of like when people say that the sanctity of marriage, right? Like, marriage has nothing to do with your religion. Marriage is a contract of estates. It deals with money and assets. The law does not care at all about your religious beliefs. You could say, oh, my religion doesn't believe in marriage when you marry. It'd be like, that's great. Give me half of your... No, it doesn't say give me. It holds you down and takes them. Anyway, that's a conversation.
It's true.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with
Marriage
those things.
is business.
I mean, some people disagree with me on that. I'm just like, no, you have to make that decision from a financial standpoint first. Love and all those things come further on down the line. That's my opinion, though. Anyway, someone texted in. It's like, you got it. 422-GR96. It's 422-4796. And it said, morning, I have a theory on the Constitution referred to former slaves when they use the word foreign. Let me read that again. Morning, I have a theory that the Constitution referred to former slaves when they use the word foreign. Can you elaborate somewhat on that text there? I think I know what you're talking about. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. Another person says, 2 questions I open are, if the law If for the law to be changed, I guess they're talking about citizenship, a parliamentary vote has to be taken. Isn't this likely before May, and thus, I'm confused. Maybe it was a spelling thing. Let me read it from the top again. Sometimes autocorrect does strange things.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so I understand. So 2 questions I open. If for the law to be changed, citizenship, a parliamentary vote has to be taken. Isn't it this unlikely before May to talk about the next election? And thus this level of sensationalism, talking about citizenship, means nothing for the next election.
But no. The legislation can be altered without a constitutional change. The
legislation, yes, not the Constitution.
That is under the Constitution does not require a constitutional change, which is what Dame Joan was saying. You don't have to change the Constitution to address the problems of citizenship being passed on. You do have to address the legislation. So there are certain acts within the laws of the Bahamas that actually supersede the Constitution problematically, but have not been struck down because they tend to benefit particular groups.
Criminal libels being one of them, right? That's still in the books.
Oh, and some of them are ultra virus the Constitution.
I don't know what that word means. You gotta. That's big words.
It goes outside the Constitution.
You did? Oh, okay. I know we have one on the books, right? It's not spelled out, but it's very confusing, right? Because we have this whole thing about one of the provisions for freedom of expression. Now, it does say within that provision, if any things, given certain circumstances and laws, this is within limits. But if you're a person in a situation, let's say like Sarkis's Marillion, which happened in the last administration, where you say things the government doesn't like, they reserve that power to basically revoke your residency within the confines of the country. The law states, I think it's that if it's issues of, there's a word for this, man. It begins with a C. When you do things against the government. Oh, I'm having a brain fart.
C?
Yeah, it's a C, I think. Oh Lord, Cohen something. Anyway, when you say bad things about the government, the Queen, Prime Minister, Cabinet, or you are inciting a riot, or
treason.
I don't know if treason would be the correct word. It begins with a C. I'm gonna remember it before the show is over. Okay, I'm gonna Google search it. Yeah, I'm gonna remember it. Sedition being a part of it as well. Seditious behavior.
Seditious act, yeah.
And sedition is extraordinarily broad in our legal context in this country. It's broad enough to capture some things, but I have not lived to see it executed, which doesn't mean that it can't be done.
I'm sure it was used before.
I'm positive.
In the 1970s, 1960s, yeah.
It's before my time, but it'd be interesting to know.
But this is a problem. Because just because it's before your time, it should not mean.
I mean, because it's not something. Yes, it is before. I shouldn't have said that. What I should have said is
but you make a good point that there is this understanding that's before, and it's never been taught.
That's what I was going to say. There is no passing down of that situation whatsoever.
No.
So my understanding of it is null because.
And I think we should go back to the first question because it is very important. Unfortunately, you have to come prepared for questions like that. Like, you have to know the legal crap. If you are a slave, you are not a human. And this is where I have issues with some people who think that the word slave and enslaved mean the same thing. They do not. An enslaved person would not have rights under British law in the Caribbean because they are not subject, they are enslaved. If you take that same enslaved person to England, Scotland, or Wales, they have different rights as they become property, and property has rights. In the Bahamas, they don't even have property rights.
I mean, they don't exist.
They exist in that they are owned, but they still do not.
Oh, I mean, yeah, they don't exist as humans.
No,
the
they don't
legal
exist
like
as
if you're
human.
not if you undocumented in this country, according the state does not recognize you. So when you got to count up like a death toll tally, it was like, no, they don't exist.
It's like women. I mean, come on. Yeah, you know, this is and we support this every day.
What do you mean? You gotta be very specific with that. Because the way that you just threw it in there, just like
The biggest inequality in the Bahamas is women. But women support women's unequalness and inequity in the law.
yeah, they'll fight you.
Oh yeah, we enjoy being unequal. Wait, what? Because if somebody come make me equal, that mean I have to pay more.
We're gonna take a quick commercial break. This has been the eye opener. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Stay tuned.
There it is.
Wait, find what you love and let it kill you. Sharp under pressure, thick and diamond. All eyes on me like a conductor. That means just play your role, you might get chime in. Wait, play the game to change the game. Word to Gooch, that's my hitter. Your wave is living in the moment, huh? My wave is living for I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I know what I'm doing, baby. Say I know what I'm doing. You're talking about a revolution.
There it is.
Wait.
Always on the go? Missed the show? You can now listen to Guardian Radio talk shows anytime, anywhere on Spotify and YouTube by searching Guardian Radio 96.9 FM or by entering the name of your favorite show. You can also listen by logging on to GuardianTalkRadio.com and clicking on the podcast tab. Guardian Radio, continuing to provide you with fresh news and smart talk anywhere, anytime, all day.
Let's face it, in an increasingly competitive market, your business needs a competitive edge. That means offering your employees the benefits they want. Give them the benefit of retiring their way with the RF Multi-Employer Pension Plan. Choose from some of the best performing investment funds in the market while taking advantage of low administrative costs and professional management. Whether you're a team of 2 or 2,000, our pension specialists can design a plan for you. Contact us at pensions@rfgroup.com to learn more about the RF Multi-Employer Pension Plan. RF, money at work.
Meet Jackie. Jackie's a hard worker with a steady income, but she has a personal loan and multiple credit cards to pay off. To keep her account current, Jackie opted for a loan from Fidelity Bank to consolidate her debt into one monthly payment and earn interest on a built-in savings account. Be like Jackie. Call 356-7764 to book a complimentary financial coaching session. Fidelity also offers virtual assistance. Fidelity, we're good for you.
There it is.
Wait, find what you love and let it kill you. Under pressure, thick and diamond.
And welcome back to the Eye Opener, your weekly dose of something different. It's a beautiful Saturday. Shanae, I don't know why you rolled your eyes just now. It's a beautiful Saturday. Tate, you still there?
You can hear me?
Yes, Tate, we can hear you. You should have been a lawyer so you could explain all these things to us and the Bahamian people. But you want to go change the public policy. And oh, Lord, we're getting some texts. Yes, it's going to be absolutely interesting. Yes. Anyway, sorry, yes. A lot of things happening. If you're just tuning in, we were talking today about citizenship. Broadening the conversation away from, I mean, we're talking about the Bahamas, but globally. And especially the ruling that we had this week that was 3-2. And one of the questions that I've been thinking to myself is like, especially statements made by the Attorney General and stuff, is like, what's going to change with this? Just because you reinterpret the law doesn't mean anything, right? Because the law says things, but on the ground, it says like reality tends to reflect differently, because I think we have legislation in place now that if you, I don't know if I should say that. Anyway, if you, let's say, get a ticket, right, we supposed to have the capacity to attach that ticket to your driver's license. And if you don't pay your ticket and you evade the police, when you go to renew your driver's license, it's supposed to be you have to pay that ticket off. Or in special circumstances, they should be able to arrest you if there's a warrant attached to these things, right? Like if you have several unpaid tickets for years, but it's supposed to be attached to those things so you can't run away from it.
So let's go back to the same discussion we started off with, the paper. As soon as you put that piece of paper on the top of that tower, it becomes a problem. If you go to the registrar's office, if you go to road traffic out by that Fadium, if you go
the Rustium, sorry.
If you go into, I'm trying to think of another office, and you have a stack of papers on the top of the computer tower that is quickly becoming extinct, that's a problem. Because it is not automated. We think that writing something on a piece of paper, then keying it into the computer that's not automation. The country is so far behind that Jesus couldn't even pull us up right now. And believe me, it's like, because you have created two trails. You have a trail that will get lost if there is a fire. And you have a trail that should be protected on a server somewhere that is actually sitting on that person's desk in that tower, because it's not linked to anywhere.
Which is something that perplexes me, right? Because you could just go to Amazon Web Services and pay for it. It's cheap. Governments around the world use it. I understand it's secure to the extent that, the CIA and any U.S. agency that needs to take a peek at those files is going to be taking a peek at those files. But cost-effective wise for the government of the Bahamas, I don't know if we use them. I think that we should be in the business of employing some cloud service or creating our own. But whenever you talk about Bahamians creating anything, I get very nervous, because the government has a tendency to do things very suspiciously, like what was brought up as well this week in the news about a contract being awarded to a certain payment app without supposedly going through the due process of bidding. It just is without that. And this isn't the first time it's happened in this administration. We saw the same thing happen. I think it was under the, at the time, Minister of Health, Dwayne Sands, where I think he apologized for it too. If I recall, it was under $2 million, which is still a substantial amount of money. Should have gone before cabinet, and it didn't. And the person who, that's a whole nother conversation altogether. But this isn't the first time. I'm sure it won't be the last. And something I always found funny about this is one of the various things that they criticized the Christie administration for. This whole thing about due process and who they award contracts to and don't. And then they go ahead and repeat the same mistakes. And I also find absolutely absurd in this world we live in is the opposition will speak out against it. But then when they get into power, you see the same behaviors repeating again. Now, I can't foresee the future, but going by the history we have of both parties, it's going to happen again. But I'm just saying, random.
Which road are we on?
The road of least resistance. Not for us, but for some people. Friction, no walls. Just
let's go to Bimini. We on the top or the bottom road?
No, it's just like a Lucha, right? Because they say up south and Lucha and down north.
No, because literally in Bimini you have this road up here and this road down here.
Which one the broke people is going? That's the road most of us exist on. We don't go across the bridge. We gotta catch we gotta either swim across or catch what a taxi. Wouldn't that be something? I saw this whole thing a few days ago too. I remember seeing it years ago, but it's this Facebook group called Bahamas Past and Present. I don't know if it's a Facebook group, but it's something where they like post pictures of the Bahamas and videos of the Bahamas from the 1940s to whenever. And it was this thing about when the cruise ships started coming in, right? And the tourists would like throw coins into the ocean and a lot of Bahamians would go diving for the coins.
Boys.
Yeah.
Not girls, boys.
Yes, always boys. And that was like, it made me think to myself. I was like, really, looking at this film, nothing has changed.
No.
We don't dive for the coins in the ocean anymore because they pennies, quite literally. We give away everything. And we work at the hotels as maids and bartenders, and we get those coins while the stacks and bricks of cash leave the country.
No. But
the structure is the same. It looks different.
How does it look different?
Because you now have a uniform.
It's gone right back to the same structure that it was pre-independence.
Did it ever leave that structure though?
Yeah, it was looking pretty. It was looking pretty transformative for a few years, and we forget that. We have overlooked that because there was a real moment, and then it shifted.
Cocaine changed priorities. It just
not even. I mean, it was insidious. The shift was insidious. So, we discussed the fact that women have fewer rights in the Bahamas and enjoy that, and empower that, and they wear that. But black Bahamians on the whole have fewer rights in the Bahamas than other people do.
You could say it. It's okay.
If you are a Canadian citizen, you have particular rights. And this is when I really begin to question if there was not a deal that happened that we didn't know about, because the Bahamas was going to be a part of Canada. It was one of those.
It should have been. I think it would have ended up better for us, or we should probably stay with the British. Because I can tell you,
it would have been the same thing.
I don't know, man. I like the way the Cayman look. Listen, they got some problems down there too, but like, I don't know, man. I don't know if the contracts would be going out the way historically it's gone out. Now, I ain't talking about right now. I talking about like the long breath of 40-something, 48 years of that. There's more than that, right? Because we had self-governance before then. So let's say 50 years. Let's round off 50 years. 55, 50 years. I don't like this direction, man.
No, it's a. I'm trying not to swear on the. It's an awkward direction because it is not going forward.
Here's my position on this, right? And this will probably drive the conversation in the way we talked about off here. The issue I have, especially with this ruling, I have no issue with the ruling. For those of you who feel some sort of way about it, or you have your opinions, I welcome you to express them. Personally, I support the ruling. I don't think citizenship should be this big of a deal in this country. Is citizenship a big deal? Absolutely, it's a big deal. But the problem I have is, regardless of whatever the law says, in actuality, it's a different story. But not even just that. It's like, I do not conflate the issue of identity with the issue of citizenship.
No.
I do not conflate the issue of, when people say tax paying and all these different types of things, and the state's opinion of its supposed people that inhabit the space that the state so-called as sovereignty over, right? Because the Bahamian state does not care for human life, necessarily. It cares for your consumption. You will get more red tape and paperwork to import something into this country than it is to fly into this country as a human being. So, just throwing that out there. But my issue with this conversation about citizenship is like two things. One, the Bahamas is an underdeveloped, underpopulated state. If you leave New Providence, it's a ghost town. Period. I think we suffer from one of the issues of, because we are an archipelagic nation, which we talk about all the beauties of it, from a state administrative standpoint, it is a nightmare. Because then you have to duplicate resources in every single island. Put in municipal water supplies, electricity, all those things, and you have to upkeep and upgrade those things.
And you have to pay for them, and you can refuse to pay for them and make the citizens suffer. Yeah.
Yes. So it's a terrible situation to be in. I think if the Bahamas were confined, I'm not saying that we should be. Let's say we were confined to 5 islands that were close to each other, that all could be connected by bridges. You would find, more than likely, I would argue, that this country would be a far more developed state. Maybe I'm wrong in this. Dr. Bethel Bennett, just my opinion on that. But the second thing about the citizenship issue that I have is that while the law may change, it doesn't actually address a lot of the systemic issues in terms of with people in this country. Because one, you have more than one generation of persons who are stateless now, right? This is one of those issues where we're stuck down a path. Even, not saying that we shouldn't, but even if you give citizenship to those persons, they cannot make up, in some cases, 40 years of being unable to participate in the formal economy of this country. It's probably one of the reasons it's echoed in the fact that you have tons of Bahamians who have a national insurance number, right? And was claiming unemployment benefits. I don't know if any of these persons were stateless, but it ties into this, I think, where scores of Bahamians do not have bank accounts. And the government had to give out contracts to payment apps in order to get money to people, because going to the banks was out of the question to cash checks, because you can't send 40,000 people on bank lines. Doesn't make any sense. Now, I have my disagreements with the whole process, but it's like we have this, we talk about we're trying to make things online, but most of our citizens are off the grid, which makes no sense to me. So it's like,
why?
Sure, it makes no sense because it's like, it's
why
broken.
are you listening to what they're saying?
Why am I listening to what they're saying?
Why are you believing what they're saying?
Explain. What do you mean?
You're telling me that we're trying to go what?
Digital. Yeah, but I'm saying, why are we trying to do that?
I just said that we have a stack of paper on top of the computer tower.
Because you go digital and you still got to get the same piece of paper. Like I said, when I went to get the police record thing, it was like you do everything online and you walk in and it's still the exact same process. There's nothing that's emailed to you automatically that just goes into the system. There's no AI, nothing. No smart integration. I talked into Big A.
And that's within the institutions we work in too. That has not changed.
Well, listen, I get it, right? I get it. I get. Oh, Lord. See, it's stressful when you think about it. Kind of like with the situation with the police, right? Where if you get in a car accident and you need to go get a traffic report on the car accident. Listen, no fault to the police, necessarily. I have spoken to persons. I had to interact with the system. It took months to get, and I was lucky. The people was there for 2-3 years trying to get a report to get their car fixed, right? And people,
years?
Yes, yes.
I just fixed it myself.
You gotta have the money to do that.
There was an accident a few months ago, I think last year. I'm sorry, time with COVID has become
relative. It's a social construct.
2 people were racing over Blue Hill Road, coming down towards Town Center Mall.
Okay.
One flipped and ended up in the next lane, in the opposite direction, and rode off somebody's car. No report. That's dead, buddy.
That happens. Well, I mean that's corruption, straight up. But I mean that's
how it's always.
There is no corruption in the police of the Bahamas.
So you know.
I've chimed enough on that on this show, but I what I was getting at was like in the case of the police in that instance. You can call right back. I saw your call. Okay, I'm gonna answer in a minute. What I was gonna say is what you notice in that circumstance is what I notice is. The computers and infrastructure that the police were given to basically do these reports kind of didn't make any sense to me, because all the paperwork was just fill in the blank handwriting, and then they take the handwriting and then enter it in the computer. And I was like, this is an incredibly inefficient system. And I asked the police about it. I was like, this is what they give us to wake with. This we got to wake with. And I was like, looking at the filing cabinets I saw inside the station as well, I just really realized, like, oh my God. This ain't gonna change in my lifetime, because all we do with the automation is a front-facing thing. Not when I say automation, online services where you interact with that part, but behind the scenes it's the exact same process. And my fear of this is that it's the same situation with citizenship. So even when the law supposedly becomes official and changes, when it goes to the Privy Council, if they approve, it's just going to be the same nonsense we saw. Anyway, good morning, caller. You're on the air. Oh, can they hear us? Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Maybe there's something wrong with that line. Let's try a different line. You can call us in at 325-4316, or read that again. That's 325-4316. Try that line. Sometimes some strange things happen. But yeah, like I was saying, the fear is that. And because of that being the case, it's like you could change the law all day, but they're still going to frustrate people for years. in the process. The policy of immigration in this country has not changed. FNM, PLP, Loftus Roca, right down to what's his name now? Fred Mitchell, right to Branville McCartney, who was once upon a time Minister of Immigration, who was seen as a hardliner, very much so. And I'm like, there has been no deviation in this policy whatsoever. So I don't get it. Like, I don't see, this is the thing I talk when I say there's very little differences between some of these parties. Well, some there's only two that never really gets anywhere. There's very little deviation because policy-wise, they're the same people. Policy-wise, right? You're still going to see people get locked up and go to the detention center. And you're still going to see the government losing cases left, right, and center.
And then you have where you have the uncertainty of whether you've seen a person or you haven't seen a person, like that is being brought forward now, and that will die very soon, of the woman who claims she saw the Cuban woman who is said to have died or drowned in. I'm like, you can't make this. This is Gabriel Garcia Marquez, 100 Years of Solitude. You cannot make this up.
But the Kenyan man who got arrested. Oh, Jesus Christ. Again, no policy changes. So I'm like, even if a government says that they support this, which this administration, when they were on the campaign trail, said that they supported changing the law in this favor. I'm very confused.
There was a body that you referred to in a few minutes ago, the AMMC or something like that. And I am like, so what is the policy that empowers them?
Yes. I think that came about under the Christie administration, if I'm not mistaken. At least they seemed to gain a lot of power then. And then the government changed, and I don't think anything changed with it. I think it pretty much carried forward all the authority that they supposedly had, because we saw what happened with the forts, and we also saw the situation that happened with the what's the name of that tower that the elevator doesn't work in anymore?
The water tower?
Yes, that's a water tower. Mm-hmm. Isn't there supposed to be a siren on top of that? Mm-hmm. For like a World War II air siren that no one can get access to because the elevator broke down years ago, and
the confabulations that continue to conflate the fact and the fiction of the post-colony. But
go ahead.
We still have not grappled with the fact that over the hill is over the hill and front of the hill is front of the hill. I grew up going to Dowswell Street, and Bahamians love this Dowswell Street because for them it's like prostitution.
I mean, I covered a different era. There's nothing on it to me.
It was the heart and soul of a living community. People lived on Dowswell Street. There were businesses on Dowswell Street. There was an active life on Dowswell Street. So my great aunt had a house, well, she had a number of houses on Dunmore Lane, which is where right up at where Royal Bank of Canada or CIBC.
One of them banks. High interest rate.
So my great aunt was my great uncle's, well, my grandmother's sister, and there were like 13 of them. And my grandmother was an Isaacs, and there is one Isaacs family in the country.
All the Justice Isaacs is related to all of them. Okay.
Which Justice Isaacs now? Which one?
It's more than one Justice Isaacs.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
No, maybe you're right.
No, one died, so there's only one right now.
Oh, yeah. One did
We're all cousins.
Wow.
We are all cousins.
Oh, yes, he did pass away.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stevie. So my great aunt had a house on Dunmore Lane, and she would sit on her porch and speak to people as they went by. And she would speak to her neighbors. There was a community, and, that was the Dunmore Lane community. But Dowswell Street was like a middle-class community. It was very interesting and very mixed. But the memory of that has completely vanished from the landscape of Bahamian psyche.
Maybe it went the same direction as Baintown did, right? Because Baintown had a similar reputation. Some people remember it that way.
And one of the people I
families
loved that
moved
used
out.
to talk about that was my cousin Charles Carter.
Yes. But what ended up happening is, something I learned in sociology is that people move out of the neighborhood
Because
and then they rent.
it was desegregated and they left it to a group of people who had no attachment to that community.
Yeah, and they just rent it out to immigrants. And then people or persons who are of a less affluent nature, and then it becomes you see the same thing repeating in different sections of the neighborhood. Then the whole neighborhood is classified as this, and then it becomes its brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I shudder to think you're going. Anyway, that's another.
But
conversation.
Don, you have within those communities, you still have nuclei that function. So you will have a goods store, a grocery store.
In walking distance, too.
In walking distance, because people did not have cars. And in order for people to function, they had to walk within their communities, and they would walk over the hill to go to work. So when Nassau or New Providence expanded, people then had to buy cars, which meant that you impoverished people even further because they now had to pay for these cars and keep them on the road.
And the government makes a lot of money off all that. We got some texts. Just like you can by texting us in at 422-4796. That's 422-GR96. Captain Logic, I like Bethel Bennett. He is a really cool guy and a smart one too. You'll be fine. However, the worst trait, okay, I maybe spoke too soon. Worst trait about him is his tendency to spit feminist hogwash nonsense. How on earth are females the biggest inequality? No disrespect, but did he grow up male or is he newly male? That's what the texter said. We read almost all the text, not in its entirety, because sometimes people use profanity, and I ain't getting locked up for y'all. Okay. Someone else texted in, good morning, Eye Opener. The guests. Listen, man, the government of the Bahamas, past and present, of being messing around with the sovereignty and natural wealth and inheritance of Bahamians for the longest of times. Examples, they allowed the police station on Paradise Island to lose its color brand. They allowed too much of the Bahamas to be reconfigured to the investors' demands with no consideration for its citizens. It makes me wonder who really is the government. My theory on that is the government is secretly a gangster operation. It's not secretly. Anyway, we can't automate this country because we don't value programmers. Companies are programmers as widget makers. We love off-the-shelf software instead. Listen to me, man. That is
so true.
Learning the code. Anyway, coding has no value really here. Anyway,
what has value here, though?
Can I say? You know what has value is. I don't want to alienate people. Or to find a politically correct way to say this. Look at me self-censoring. What has value in the Bahamas is money, and shades of skin. If you have never seen me before, you can, I guess you could technically view what we all look like on, where is it now? Yes, if you have BTC Flow channel 612 or Cable Bahamas channel 969, I am what is classified as a darkie. And, I'm... So technically in the Bahamas, my position is to heat up the place and not be listened to. I also don't have $10,000 in my closet, which my driver can steal. I'm speaking to a very specific person. We've also had a texter, which I wanted to address last week, who said that a lot of business owners, $10,000 is nothing. And I just wanted to say, the average Bahamian in this country makes less than $25,000 a year.
Exactly.
Also, the average Bahamian before Hurricane Dorian had less than $500 in the bank. Further complicating that issue, we have, I don't know the percentage because we don't track that. We have scores of Bahamians that do not even have bank accounts.
Exactly.
And if you go every Friday to CIBC, RBC, some of these banks, you will find persons in the construction industry lining up to cash checks because they do not have bank accounts.
So let's go back, because I think that there's some the lovely comment about the feminists.
Yes. You being a feminist and destroying this country.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, women should have fewer rights. I think that they should have fewer. They should also be killed by their husbands, and their husbands should just walk scot-free. But this goes back to slavery, where black women were deemed as less than black men, but they could be managed in ways that black men, in theory, could not be managed. So they provided a particular avenue to keep slaves subdued. And if we forget that, well, goodness me, we just never really remembered the fact that the Bahamas is a slave colony. And the fact that slave laws regulated how black bodies moved. And the fact that black women's bodies were used to propagate an enslaved system. The sad part is that when you say that, you allow your inequality to show through. All black people are unequal in the Bahamas. Black men are less unequal than black women. However, they are continually treated differently. And if you did not see that under the COVID emergency orders, then you are blind. And it is unfortunate that we have come to this position where poverty is not marked by race or color or ethnicity. And that allows so much to get swept out with simple poverty. And how I got $5 more than you do.
Well, I think, hold on, I just got another text in, but I'm going to read this last one before I get to that one. It says, the parties are the same. They all use foreign qualified professionals. That means they all make the same assumptions, hence their approach is the same. And they just texted again, just now. It is okay to be feminist, but it should not be pursued at the expense of boys. This is the person.
No, definitely not pursued at the expense of boys.
They say we have programs to help girls in life while we help boys through sports. Now, the other person who you were responding to texted back. They said,
"Oh no,
no, they didn't say anything bad. It just was like, oh my god." Can I say that? Let's say lol, because I don't know Urkin's being this strange. And let's say lol. Here he goes again. Go right off the rails into the toilet. Oh, I love these texters, man. They light up the show. Someone says, "But you crazy? Everyone would be locked up if you attach tickets to our license. Don't be so ambitious. I would be locked up 3/4 of the year."
Oh my lord!
Oh, how many tickets are you getting, texter? Please say cousins make dozens. You didn't read my text. Yes, I did read your text. I just got to it. Sorry about that, texter. But no, don't. I don't know how many tickets you have. Please don't get more tickets. Don't get lockup. That ain't a good place to be. And you better if you've had tickets, caller, please keep your receipts on you because the police will lock you up if you don't keep the receipts, or they will fine you again. Not a good experience because, we still are a paper society. But going back to the conversation about citizenship, right? I don't know why feminism has become a divisive topic.
Because religion has promoted that women are less than men.
Okay, I can burn some bridges here with probably some of our listeners, but too bad. Sinead, have you ever heard of the prosperity gospel?
No.
You haven't? What churches go to? I feel like this church you were to say this preach the prosperity gospel.
What do you mean by prosperity gospel? Maybe like I know what it is.
I can ultra simplify it, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's basically, I'm going to put this in very layman's ultra simplified terms, but this isn't precisely what it means. Essentially, if you have money or you're doing well financially in your career and stuff, it's because you're in favor. And if you're not, it's because you're a bad person. That's a very simplified version of that. But it gets way more complex than that. So
I went to a lot of churches, but I go to SU church.
You go to...
I said my bench.
Oh! So you don't wear jewelry or drink coffee.
You should be in church right now.
You should be in church right now. I was never Seventh Adventist because I like crab too much. And I like conch. You don't like... That's right, you can't eat crab and conch.
You can do whatever you want.
You can just pray about it, Also, I've seen... Anyway, let me not even get nobody business. I've seen Rastas eat all kind of things. Who they themselves profess to be Rastas and I don't get nobody business, but
So let's go right back to that inequality that the person's talking about in terms of young men. And this is something that we have been struggling with for decades. There is a situation in the Bahamas, like many of other Caribbean countries, that has been ignored. And yes, young men are really in trouble. But the structural racism and structural inequality perpetuates that trouble for young men. It's like religion. Would young boy go and feel comfortable sitting up in church for 3 hours, 4 hours?
no, I didn't like man, boy. They just go to church, eh?
No, I do not.
You give offering, eh? And that's something that I've noticed that permeates beyond the borders of the Bahamas. You know, even in the United States, when I saw the statistics in the black community, the majority of churchgoers are women.
Yeah.
And I think they're between the age, like, it seems like when black women get in their 30s, they just go to church.
Everyone go to church.
This can sound bad, but it's the truth. There's statistics to show that black women, when they're single and in their 30s, they're twice as likely to go to church.
Yeah.
Because, Jesus and stuff. But, yeah, I'm judging, man. Live your life. You going to say something, Tate?
No, I was saying Jesus. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. Won't he do it? Continue, Dr. Bethel Bennett.
What did he?
He said Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
Jesus is our Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus does not do anything for you without you doing it for yourself. And this is one of the challenges.
Faith without works is dead. And that's why we have to sow a seed
when I moved,
of $1,000.
When I moved here,
and
I
you were
was
reaping
told
harvest.
that the Lord would provide. One of my students said,
He will.
the Lord will provide. And I was like, I'd never heard that said in relation to
You know why?
grades.
Oh, in grades. Wow. No. I was going to say because you didn't drive the Mercedes yet. Because he provides ways for that Mercedes and that BMW. Oh, and sometimes if you're doing well enough, that Bentley to get gassed up and serviced on a regular basis. And if you follow me to take $25,000 vacations. And if you to also molest persons in your church. And nobody says anything because...
That's the deepness of the...
Hey, listen. When I talk about this thing, like when I say this thing, I mean in the States is way worse than it is here because you could be a multi-millionaire and pay no taxes because the church is the ultimate tax loophole. Listen, I'm not against the church. I'm just saying people abuse this whole system. And when we talk about this, back to this thing about citizenship, right, is the same nature of which some people take this approach towards some of our leaders. We hold them as essentially deities, for lack of a better term. Like I remember we had, I could say that, I guess. We had someone from the Young Liberals, one of the leaders of the Young Liberals, that was years ago, who came on the show, and this was when Ken Dorset was still a member of Parliament. And man, he just was like, every guy said, I said, Ken Dorset will do it. And listen, Ken Dorset, I was like, wow, Ken Dorset must be a great guy. I saw the same thing on display when I watched the debates, right? The first guy, his last name was Smith. Yes. When he was doing his debates, I thought he was very well read. I think he was a little too rehearsed, but he performed well. But one of the things I noticed that he did was he kept saying, Brave Davis has a plan. Brave Davis. Listen to me. Let me tell you about Brave Davis. My party and Brave Davis. And I was like, I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
I must have gone to the wrong school.
You didn't go to Brave Davis school?
I should have gone to the University of Wolf Road. I went to the wrong university.
Most people don't even know about the University of Wolf Road.
I was told from older Bahamians that being at PLB was like a religion. And listen, a lot of people who I knew who were older and worshipped our religion, they rich. So something about that's like a prosperity gospel. You probably just believe and good things is happening in your life. I don't know. But back to the conversation about the citizenship issue when I talked about there's no policy changes, there's no shifts.
The University of Wolf Road is an important part of Bahamian history, and that cannot be overlooked.
Or erased.
Because it facilitates that if we overlook it, it allows too many other things to continue as if they were unchecked. And if we erase it, then it means that it didn't happen. And it happened for a reason. It was in response to something that was denied to most black Bahamians, and that was education. if you were living in a stratified, segregated community that really did not smile on you getting an education, how are you going to get an education? After a certain point, education became much more accessible for a particular number of years, and then it just
to close the door behind them, right? Like you said earlier.
Close the door behind them.
I didn't. Are you part of that generation where the scores of Bahamians who got sent off to school?
How do you mean?
Well, no, not say scores, but several Bahamians got sent off to school and they came back, got their PhDs, master's degrees.
No, that would have been like Pinling's generation. So that was very 1940s, 1950s, because the United Bahamian Party, believe it or not, was actually educating particular people to become leaders within the community. And the Colonial Office were doing similar things. So there was scholarship being offered through City Market that were very important
because that carries through
to middle class and working class black Bahamian families and white Bahamian families, because again, this colored foolishness has really obfuscated or hidden so much of the real poverty that has continued to hound the Bahamas. So you were talking about areas, right? One of those areas, I keep referring students to Fowler Street. Fowler Street was very, very white. And if you go over Shirley Street and you continue on what was Fowler Street, that is Kemp Road. So how is it that the front of Kemp Road is so white?
Caucasian.
And the back of Kemp Road is seen to be so bad.
It's so hot.
And then
it's heating up the place.
Mrs. Taylor wrote a book about how middle class Kemp Road was. But nobody understands Kemp Road to be middle class anymore. Because from the time I was at QC, the bad people...
don't go through the back gate. Or if you go through the back gate, get picked up in the schoolyard. Don't walk down there. Because it's hot. It's a lot of heat being permeated from that flesh.
Especially all the smoke coming out of the bush.
Oh man, we have a text again. This person responded, boy, they really on you today. They said, no, Bethel, because feminism has simply turned into an anti-male, pro-female group that is covered in a lie of equality for both. You're thinking too hard for an answer, bro. Listen to the guy's opinion on the matter instead of the little voice on your shoulder. On another note, ask the texter if he knows some local programmers, because I find it hard. It is hard to find people. Listen, I actually know two. One left the country because the pay sucks. The other one is still here, and they're also an app developer. They said, someone else says, those women who go to church at the age to ask for forgiveness for all the... Oh, God. Well, I knew this was going this direction. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, they asked the age for forgiveness for all the bad things they did in Culture Club and Charles years before. Okay. What about the men? Do we not ask for forgiveness too? Do we not do things?
Not in the word.
Back to the conversation. Oh, Lord.
So citizenship is really troublesome in the post-colony. If you look at South Africa, you will see the challenges with citizenship. We are South Africa.
No. South Africa is the Bahamas on steroids. The ANC, the African National Congress, is literally the PLP, because they're the legacy party that brought the country to independence.
Yeah.
A lot of the same things that was happening to Christie, and even Ingram too, and even Minnis now, I saw directly in the ANC with persons like Jacob Zuma. And this is topic of citizenship, right, which you talk about too, is something they've been battling with. And I've listened to the conversations about it, and all I could say is, my God, it's the same thing as us. Except they're far bigger, have a way bigger economy, and it's like there's so much more resources to steal.
But it's a company. It's a corporation. It's almost as...
It's a plantation where people die for the pennies, and...
It's almost as intricately organized as Rhodesia under Rhodes.
Cecil Rhodes, a very interesting guy.
But
yeah, you're right. You look at the racial issue.
Go anywhere like Raffles in Singapore. The structures don't disappear because colonialism in quotation marks ended. They continue. Why are we finding bodies in Canada now? Because they were there. They had been there. We knew they were there. They've been known to have been there for decades. And unfortunately, the Catholic Church bears a lot of the responsibility for this. You know, the Catholic Church is as problematically intricated in colonialism as is the Crown.
The Church? Wow, they never helped Nazis escape.
Go watch The Mission.
Or you can watch was another good film to watch about this. Spotlight.
Spotlight.
Talked about the situation in Boston, how they'd shuffle around the priests after they molest boys. You know, because it was one thing that seems to be prominent in the Catholic Church at times. It's like the
molestation on the whole.
Yeah, even of nuns.
Yeah.
And the Pope acknowledges, I'm not making any of this up, and I know people will be like, I'm going too far. And I would say, don't you think those priests went too far with those boys?
And girls.
They do that to girls too? I thought it was just, they seem to have a propensity for little boys.
Because that was who they were closest to. That was who they had access to without things being questioned. Now, if you're in a room with a girl as a priest, somebody's going to be looking at you sideways. If you're in a room with a boy, they're not going to be looking at you sideways. Because it's like, if you are a seminarian, you're a boy.
I think personally, child molesters should be. If there's a case for the death penalty, that's it right there. Anyway, we're back to the conversation about citizenship.
And those bodies were not citizens. They were never citizens.
How? Well, I guess my next question would be how. Like, what happens from here? Ignoring the behind the scenes paperwork that has to be done with this whole process of citizenship. My question then becomes: is this anywhere near enough? Like, obviously it's not, but I mean, like, will this have any impact on addressing any of the economic issues? I'm looking at this from a money standpoint, right? Because people would then be able to participate supposedly in the formal economy, assuming they get their paperwork sorted. And I'm wondering what sort of impact can we be looking forward to on the economy? And from my just layman's view, I don't see much. But
so when you said in the formal economy,
because then people can come and have children.
And this is when I think the Minister of Fisheries got up and said that if you are less prepared to jump at an opportunity than some people, then that's your fault, basically. Was that not the minister's parting jab at his people last week as a part of his...
Everybody join jobs now because they ain't got no nomination. I know what's
debate. What's the thing called? The budget debate without any real numbers or any real budget, and the fact that it is so intransparent that it looks like mud.
Remember the minister of so many ministers, right? You know what? He made the Minister of Labor when he's talking about the situation with employment, and he made statements in front of the media saying that employment numbers are up, but he didn't have the data. And I was like, we're not saying that you're wrong, but like,
it's so easy to make these statements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like why are you saying anything? Just shh. If the media call you and be like, I have no comment at this time, or we are waiting the data to be tabulated,
and we are ignoring the fact that we still have seriously high numbers of cases of COVID, and we are charging people for water like they've never been charged before, but we are claiming that we are working with these communities to improve their access to water. You want to increase fees and increase access and improve access. The two don't work together. So you have communities that are even more unequal than they were 2 years ago. but now you're going to increase how much you charge for water and get rid of or undo the first 100 gallons or 500 gallons, I can't remember, for free. But you don't think this is a problem because the Bahamas is a very wealthy nation. And the citizenship thing should be a little bit more concerning to people who don't even challenge the fact that we have economic citizens walking in and out of the country every day.
I mean, the things that the Chinese government allegedly, but then really did, like request for the situation in Bahamas, yeah.
And the fact that if you buy a particular piece of property for over a certain amount of money, you get fast track to citizenship.
You know, here's but something I said back then with the economic citizenships thing, right? Because I worked at a different radio station at the time. Was you ever watched Apocalypse Now or like any of the Vietnam movies, like ever, except for the parody ones? But yeah, you see the scene where usually the U.S. soldiers fly into Vietnam and everybody says "Welcome to Vietnam," and those soldiers have these things in their mind about the adventure of going to war in Vietnam. Then they lose their innocence fighting in a war and they realize this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Yeah. That is the perception that I have about the Bahamas sometimes. When I used to think about the situation of citizenship, I used to be like if I could be that person right after someone gets the paper straight, right? I just shake down and it's like, welcome to the ghetto, right? Welcome to the suffering. It's a pleasure to have you here. You can stand right over there. We all heat up the place and get taxed to death. And right over there is where everybody... And that's the thing with the economic citizenships and the regular citizenship. Because if you come into this state, essentially, with little resources, no money, or a little bit of money, and very low education, you're going to have a horrible time here. Listen, I believe people shouldn't be stateless. If you're born in this country, like I said, I think you should be entitled. But the issue then becomes is like, even if you do become a citizen here, why I don't think much will change is because, like we talked about all this entire show, all the structures are in place for you to fit neatly into one of these slots of poverty, more than likely, or you'll be working class for the rest of your life. Like the advantages of being a citizen are skewed towards persons who have more resources than those who don't.
Right.
That's
but
what I should be saying.
Even if you do get an education, you have to be able to use that education in interesting ways to get yourself out of poverty.
Don't get a degree in psychology. It's pretty worthless in the Bahamas. I shouldn't say that, but I just being honest. Like it's hard.
But we will go to somebody who went to university with me, who has a PhD in psychology, bring them in, get them to consult because they don't look like us.
Yeah.
Colonialism.
If I had your accent and I was like 15 shades brighter, I would be very successful right now.
How much shades?
See,
15.
I swam on PI the other day. Don't do it.
I'd be very successful.
What astounds me is the fact that...
Oh,
right.
The Tate has some things going on in the background, but continue. What astounds you?
Is that this has been building for a decade. And every time it builds, it comes to a little crescendo and it diminishes, but it never ends. So the fence has been there. They close the gate every so often to establish their right to close the gate. And now that they're building, people are upset. You knew they were going to do it. Why are you upset? But again,
I mean, I support Trump. Yeah.
Totally support.
Yeah, because once you let them close that gate once and you do nothing.
But you didn't stop them from closing the gate before.
Well, it's different now.
And this is the challenge. You don't think that because somebody comes out and gives you a few pleasantries, they're gonna not close the gate. They're just gonna close the gate. They just lie into your face. And the gate will be closed. Or somehow you will have to pay for access. But again, education. We talk about education all the time, right? The University of the Bahamas is a wonderful institution that provides education where students threaten to kill their professors because I don't like the way you think. And I am justified because nobody's going to challenge me for threatening to kill you. where
this has happened. Oh wow! I look at you. Okay, I didn't know. That's why I'm asking.
nobody knows, or nobody cares to know, because the structures are so opaque and so dysfunctional that if you are teaching material, you got to pay for that material. And the material costs to come in now are borne by the people providing the service, not by the institution. So in order to buy books, we got to pay for the books, right? In order to buy books, you got to pay for the books, right? Why is it that to bring books into this country is so expensive that it is prohibitive? I mean,
they're supposed to be duty free, right?
You still have, if you bring in one book, you got to pay $10 for the
processing fee and all that.
Yeah. Well, $10 just for the package.
$10 is a little, but yeah, it's more than that usually. Depending on the weight of the book.
No, that's just the package fee. Then you have the weight. Then you have the VAT. Then you have the
all other associated costs.
Processing fee.
1%.
So by the time you pay you paid twice for the book. You paid Amazon $10 and you paid the Bahamian government $15. So you paid $25 for a book that if you lived somewhere else would cost you less than half of that.
Or a penny, because you could buy some books on Amazon for a penny.
But again, it bears your discussion out. But people will not see it that way because it's not convenient for them.
When you say it out loud, it kind of makes me feel sometimes like, for lack of a better term, we have some people that are, I mean, if you're threatening someone with violence because they're teaching material, right? It kind of reminds me of like you saw those the imagery in those biology books of supposedly the Neanderthal, where they drag the knuckles on the ground with a club and say, "You bad man, smash." Right? Like that's how I sometimes perceive when I hear these things. It's like how we can't be this stupid, man. Come on. I mean, I'm saying that because everybody can have a difference of opinion. One of the things we always do on this show, people disagree with us all the time. Like some of the texters disagree with you all the time, and that's fine. We open to that sort of discourse and discussion. Of course, don't insult anybody, and I don't read anything that insults people or disparages someone's character, but there should never be a situation where you're threatening violence against somebody. That's one of the things that I've been talking about, right? It's like when you become the citizen of the Bahamas, like you become a part of all of this. And I know persons who've gotten their citizenship in the past, and the first thing they did is they got the paperwork to get the travel documents and stuff, is they leave instantaneously. Listen, I don't blame them. We have not done a good job at all at creating a system to retain people. We have created a system that's kind of like either a conveyor belt to poverty, a conveyor belt to wealth for certain people who manage to put a screwdriver inside the conveyor belt and push that into a different direction, or the aliens come down from one of the big countries and suck you up, and then you leave the Bahamas for now and forevermore. And everybody has it in their family. You have one family member that went to the States, never came back home, or they come home to visit, but they're like, "You ever moving back?" Nah, I ain't doing that. And it's like, it's interesting hearing their perspectives on things and how they look back at home. And it's like, I'm the only one in my family who actually got out and they started a family and everything. And watching the levels of prosperity and the differences in it. And listen to how they talk. As my aunt is one of those situations. She moved, I think, in the 80s and moved to the Cayman Islands. And listening to her story about how she perceived the Bahamas back then. And how she told me when she was young, they used to have these conversations of citizenship. I think she also referenced the Darcy Ryan case as well. Was it Darcy Ryan or Darcy? No, Darcy Ryan. Ryan, yes. And how she remember reading in the papers when she was over there about the situation and saying, we're going to resolve this issue. Of course, we're 30 years down the line now. And 40. It's 40 years. Wow. We getting old. She didn't even know what 1980s look like. Me neither. But anyway, I should say, like, these things still barreling down and perpetuated. So, like, the conversation about citizenship is fine, but like even if you're for or against, if you don't support or you disagree with, I should say, the developments that's happened, and we'll see where this goes in the Privy Council. The reality is, after you land on the ground as a citizen or a resident of this country, and you ain't like behind the gates rich, like this is a very ghetto experience. Would not recommend. We're out of time, unfortunately. Tate, you still there?
You hear me?
Yes. Any last words before we gotta go? We got one more text to read before we go.
Nothing from me, really.
You got a Freeport perspective. You're supposed to be a little different. I know. Anyway, no, that's not a conversation. Freeport's strange. We're looking for welders in Freeport. So if you're looking for a high-paying job, be a deep-sea welder. You could make 6 figures a year, probably. Shanae, any final words? I'm being dead serious about that, too.
How do you weld deep? Okay.
No, deep-sea welders.
Deep-sea welders.
They make serious bank in this country, and we import people to do it.
Russians, Czechs,
Canadians, Slavs, all sorts of people. You didn't know that?
Big money.
One of the highest paying jobs in the Bahamas is deep sea welding. Believe it or not. And I'm talking 6 figures almost. Because we have Bork and all this. Well, there's Bork was still a thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bork and all those things in Freeport. There's a lot of things underwater that needs to be welded when repaired and upkeep. And we're expanding the cruise port up there as well. So there's a lot of work to go around, a lot of high-paying, good jobs, which would be a good time to become a citizen and participate in that process, right? Maybe that's the upside.
None of those are citizens.
I know. I was trying to be positive.
They work in the free port.
And this is the thing was strange. They had this initiative where they were pushing to bring people, Bahamians, into the process, right? Where they said they was looking for 7 candidates and they couldn't find anybody. I don't know, man. Maybe the citizenship thing isn't the biggest deal we should be paying attention to in this country. I think that's the least of anybody's worries, or should be. We'll see what happens in the future. This has been the Eye Opener. Like we always say on this show, many hands build a school, many hearts build a home. I always mix those two things up, but who cares? It takes many Bahamians concerned like me and you to build this Bahamas. Be good, Bahamas.